Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 word and some reaction to the 2021 Qatar Grand Prix. I think that was a lot better than I was expecting anyway. I think that was pretty decent Grand Prix. Plenty of action through the field. Helped, of course, with a few cars out of position, but still pretty decent race. I enjoyed that. I thought we were going to get an absolute stinker. That was the feeling, wasn't it? On the run up to this weekend, it'd be tough to overtake and wouldn't be much fun. Okay, most of it was DRS overtaking, but I enjoyed that one. Good evening to everyone. Hello to I'm going to do shout outs super quick. I've not done this for a while at the start of the stream. Calm down, everyone. We'll get to everything. Don't worry. Hello to Just Me, to Ty, to Rohan, to Emily, to who I said hello? Lats, to F1 Fan 89, to JJDD, to Albert, to Ryan, to Kargi. Hey to Charles Edward Cheese. I'll get to super chats in just a moment. You know what to do. Hit that like button for Charles. We'll do that in a moment. Hey to Ty, to Balint. I'm going to destroy all names there. Max as well. Two more. Nico. I'll say three more. Daniel Philpott. And we'll say hello to Evan as well. Good evening, everybody. Let's kick off with a look at this race results. Spoiler alert. If you're tuning into a race reaction and you shot there's going to be spoilers, I'm so sorry. Lewis Hamilton, victory. Second in a row. 25.7 seconds clear of Max Verstappen, who did, of course, make that later stop. But what a weekend that is for Mercedes. Absolutely dominant from Hamilton. Fernando Alonso. I got something right in a prediction. Come on. Fernando Alonso, P3 for Alpine. I could not be happier for any driver today. So pleased to see him up there. Sergio Perez in fourth. Fifth for Esteban Ocon. Huge. We'll talk about it, of course, in the Constructors' Championship. Lance Stroll sixth. Carlos Sainz seventh. Charles Leclerc eighth. Great day for Ferrari, despite what looks like a disappointing result in some ways. Lando Norris only ninth. Sebastian Vettel 10th with a point for Aston Martin. Pierre Gasly 11th. Daniel Ricciardo 12th. Yuki Tsunoda 13th. Then it's the Alphas of Raikkonen and Giovinazzi 14th. And 15th, Mick Schumacher beating the Williams boys. Again, we'll get to why shortly. 16th place, 17th for Russell, 18th for Mazepin. And then DNFs for Nicholas Latifi and Valtteri Bottas. Now, we're going to say a very good evening. It's been so bloody long. Hello, Dan.
Hello, mate. You all right?
Yeah, not bad. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. It's not a bad race today. That's definitely made things a lot better, but it's been so long.
Too long. It's unacceptable. You need to stop your teach training and you need to be on my streams because I can't cope, mate. I can't cope. Was that better than you were expecting then, Qatar? Because I know when we were talking about the end of the season last time we spoke, we were sort of like, oh, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, the tracks don't look great. Was that better than you were expecting today?
I think so. I was slightly nervous heading into this one. I thought the layout was okay. And, without being too much of a Debbie Downer 2 minutes into the stream, I think next time out's going to be a bit worse. That one I'm not looking forward to. But this one I felt looked similar-ish to Bahrain, but it's just flat. It's so flat. Sector 2 and 3, there's no real opportunities for overtaking. But I think the fact they were able to follow so closely throughout the whole race made it entertaining all the way through. And, of course, some of the big dramatic moments late on with the tyre degradation just helped it that little bit more too. But the track was okay. I'm not in any sort of rush to go back here, but it certainly wasn't one of the worst ones on the calendar.
No, I was dreading it. I thought it was going to be impossible to overtake. I'm saying in the preview it's going to be tough. I thought it'd be tough to follow. It was all going to be DRS overtakes. All right, most of them were. But we got some good wheel-to-wheel action. The DRS even in some cases brought drivers side by side through those first couple of corners. So I absolutely loved that. I was very, very happy with that race. It's not going to go down as my favourite of the season or anything like that, but I still think a really good race. I'm just going to do the two super chats that have come in super quickly. First of all, thank you very much to Armin. Says, finally that day has come. You've all been waiting for. No exceptions. Let's be honest with ourselves. There you go. Thank you very much to Armand for your contribution. And thank you again, once again, to Charles Edward Cheese. Every contribution, every super chat is massively appreciated. But you are an absolute legend. Thank you so much. He says, Hi host, Lee here, back again with another view. Why does the Merc suddenly have so much pace? Why do Red Bull and Mercedes consistently bottle it with their second drivers? And for fluff's sake, why is English conversation called a waffle? P.S. Congrats. Thank you very much, Charles. You know what to do, guys. Hit that like button. It's $500 contribution. Let's try and get those likes up to 500. And we will answer some of those questions, hopefully, for you, Charles, as we go through this stream. But let's start We'll do what we usually do. We'll go through team by team in order of how they finished. So we'll do Mercedes, Red Bull, and then we'll get on to everybody else as well. So we'll kick off with Mercedes. Every time I have you on, Dan, this is a line I feel like I keep using. I don't really know what to say about Lewis Hamilton's day today or his weekend. It was just absolutely dominant. He put it on pole yesterday by a mile. I know there were some issues with yellow flags, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but Hamilton stuck it on pole by a mile. He wasn't affected by those yellows. He was helped early doors, I would say, with the grid penalties for Verstappen and Bottas. That's put them out of position. It gave him a free run, really, at that first corner, I would say. And he just was never challenged from there. Consistently sort of 6 to 8 seconds clear of Verstappen. The extra pit stop Verstappen makes that gap look worse than it actually was in reality. Just a pretty perfect day, except for one thing, and that is that he couldn't get that fastest lap that went to Max.
Yeah, I think in this season, in 2021, that's as close to a perfect weekend you're going to get. Like you mentioned, the only slight blemish is not getting that fastest lap and just missing out on a Grand Slam because he led every single lap as well. I think the only, apart from that fastest lap, the only other time this weekend that he was looking slightly nervous was FP1. And what difference does that really make? Not a fat lot. Hamilton, we know how good he is in Formula One, but also going to new venues, it's something he's always been great at. He's straight away, straight on the pace. And after that shaky FP1, which was down to the car, was it a chassis? Something wrong with the chassis? I can't quite remember what it was. Either way, that seemed to vanish instantly in FP2, and it just seemed to build on from there. And yellow flags or not, in Q3, what a lap that was. That was a perfect lap on board. Almost no corrections, no oversteer, no understeer. I think there was a tiny little kink through the final corner, but come on, that's as near to perfect as you're going to get. I don't think Bottas would have challenged for that pole. I don't think Max would have been able to either. And I think you're right. He was slightly helped out today with those grid penalties. And I think having that freedom of that 8-second gap, Mercedes could just copy Max's strategy. Of course, that helps out, but at the same time, no mistakes. On a circuit where running slightly wide, we found out on multiple occasions this weekend, that can be a puncher. That can be front wing damage. We had something similar with Max in the early stages, maybe having a bit of damage on the front wing. But either way, Hamilton, again, as close to perfect as you're going to get in a season like this.
He needed it as well, didn't he? I know he got the win in Brazil. A brilliant drive to come through the field twice, as Crofty kept telling everybody. But I think that he needed that because it keeps, from his point of view, it keeps the championship in his hands, doesn't it? In the sense that if he wins all the remaining races, he is world champion. If he'd lost out today, it would have been tougher because, you know, even if he'd won today with fastest lap, he would have been, 20 points behind? Something like that with a couple of races to go, so it would have been tough. So it keeps it in his hands. It was a massive win, but they're just so... They've got this pace. And the funny thing is, people have been talking about this power unit and what's going on there with the extra power and all of that business, but they didn't even use the Brazil spec engine this weekend. They're using that in Saudi Arabia. So this was the one that must have been from around Qatar time. The one they put in Turkey or something like that. Or was it Turkey? Where did they take that penalty? I can't remember now.
Yeah, it was Turkey, yeah.
So, you know, there's still pace to come in Saudi, which I think is going to really worry Red Bull. I mean, they did all they could today. Max Verstappen could do no more. He started 7th. He came through the field. He was 4th by turn 2. Very lucky not to have a Fernando Alonso in the side of him. That was a little bit hairy coming into turn 2, but he got past those two fairly swiftly and then just settled in behind Hamilton, like I say, 6 to 8 seconds of gap throughout. And I think that's about all he could have done today. That's damage limitation. It's a cliche, but it's exactly what he had to do today. Nobody was touching Hamilton. I think that was the feeling. It may have even been somebody from Red Bull that said that, you know, it's going to be tough to match them in the race. It might have been somebody on Sky. You know how they just talk and talk, says Sean. But yeah, I don't think Max could have done any more today. He'll be disappointed that he's given up some of that championship lead. But again, if he keeps finishing second when Hamilton's winning, he's not going to win the title. But if he's not going to catch him, that's all he can do, surely.
Yeah, and I think with the pace of that Mercedes, not just this weekend, but in Brazil and like you kind of hinted to there, that momentum really seems to be on Mercedes' side at the moment. Second place is awesome. If you're thinking Mercedes are going to be the team to beat, and with Bottas I think driving as good as he's ever been driving recently. I think since he's been announced he's leaving, he's really turned it up a notch, which is a shame for him. But for Mercedes, that's exactly what they need. For Max to come away with a P2 and for Valtteri to not score points, yes, he had that puncher and obviously the ultimate DNF. But for still Max to be starting behind Valtteri, to get through that traffic so quickly up to P4, and then to dispatch Gasly, was that an overtake? Was that getting out the way? I'm sure we'll discuss that a little bit later on. And then past Alonso so quickly. That's why Max is so good. He is so ruthless with those overtakes. Valtteri got caught in the traffic and his race was pretty much over, like I say, despite starting in front of Max. So P2, fastest lap to go with it as well. That extra point that we know is going to be so crucial in the championship this year. I think you're right. I think that's a really good day's work from Verstappen. The other side of the garage, I think Red Bull made a bit of a strategy blunder on that one. But from Max's side, they did all they could do. They tried that undercut. That was never going to work with that kind of gap that Hamilton was able to make in that first stint. They played it safe with that 2-stop and then the eventual 3-stop for the fastest lap, which again, they were just covering. So I think when you look at the entire picture of the season, of course, they would have loved a victory here. They would have loved a full safety car, whether that was when Latifi had his puncher, when Valtteri had his puncher, just that opportunity to pass Lewis Hamilton, to fight him, they didn't have today. So with that in mind, P2, it's a perfect job.
Yeah, and it's interesting to say about the fastest lap. I remember when they brought that rule in. I think we had a conversation, probably on a live stream, as we do, where we talked about, do we really want this to be decided? Championships be decided by fastest lap, and I think some people in chat saying, it's just part of it. It's the same for everybody, which is absolutely true. But realistically, that's never going to happen. Fastest lap could decide the title this season. I think they were saying on Sky, I think Karun Chandler tweeted it, that I think Hamilton, if he wins and takes fastest lap in Saudi Arabia, they go to Abu Dhabi level on points. So a fastest lap could decide this world championship. If they go to Abu Dhabi level on points, it's who finishes in front, which is kind of what I want to see in a championship finale, is who finishes first, or whoever finishes in front is world champion. But, if they both end up crashing out or problems in Abu Dhabi, that fastest lap could be critical. So, yeah, I just can't wait, Dan. These next two races, and it's so good not to have to stress out like I used to in the Michael Schumacher days about my favourite driver winning it. I don't care. Stoff ain't there, so it doesn't matter anymore. It's just so much fun to sit back. I can only imagine. Well, I know. I was going to say I can only imagine the stress that Hamilton and Verstappen fans are going through. I know what you're going through. I went through it in 2003 and 98, 99, 97. Oh, it was hell on earth. But it's just great to sit back and enjoy this. And it's two teams going at it on and off track. Two of the best drivers, probably the two best drivers on the grid right now. This season is just, it feels like it's only going to get better. And we've got such an unknown next time out. And I kind of almost want us to just get on with it now. Let's have Saudi next weekend, and then we'll do Abu Dhabi. And then, do you know what? Let's have a couple more races in Brazil or something. Why not? Let's just keep going. It's just too good. So very excited for this one and these next two races. And I don't really see... I can't call it. I know Mercedes, a lot of people would argue, have the better car now with that power unit, and they're able to, their top speed is looking good. Red Bull are much closer this weekend. We don't know what that engine's going to do in Saudi Arabia, but I just can't call it, Dan. And I'm so happy about that. I don't want to sit here going, such and such has got a bigger lead and it looks like they're going to do it. And I love this not knowing going into every weekend. Not knowing for sure. You can suspect, can't you? But you can't ever know for sure.
Yeah, and I think of course, next weekend, we've got no idea how that's going to play out. It's a street circuit, which straight away you'd think, that's going to play towards Red Bull's strengths. But then when you actually look at the layout of the thing, that is not a street circuit. That is a mess of a track. Who knows who's going to come out on top? Even if Merc do have that slight advantage at the moment, what do we normally say in Abu Dhabi? We normally say that's a Mercedes track, nailed on, they're going to win. And last season, Max Verstappen ran away with it. So it's so unpredictable. And I think I can only echo what you've just said. It's so awesome that we've got to this part of the season and we've got a fight on our hands for the first time since 2016. But also, I think just that added jeopardy of we don't know what's going to happen next season. This, in theory, might be the last chance either of them. I'm sure it's probably not for Max Verstappen, but this could be the last season where Hamilton is fighting for a world championship. Just that little extra cherry on top. Not that we even need it. It's so, so close. And you're right. Predicting it at this part of the season is bonkers. And even the constructors, Valtteri and Checo, so, so close to each other in that driver's standings. Red Bull and Mercedes, so, so close. It really wouldn't be out of the question still to see a team's championship and a driver's championship with two different teams winning it.
I just don't care, mate. Anybody can have it. It's so good. Couple of things to note. First things first, Charles says he'll take a shot for every 50 likes. So if you want to get somebody paralytically drunk, just smash that like button. Every 50 likes, he's going to have to take a shot. Why not? But in my notes, I like to make notes, Dan, because, my memory at 35 is not what it used to be.
Never.
Hamilton thought way too early for his pit stop initially, but I think, as we'll get onto in a minute with Valtteri Bottas, great shout to pit when they did and just respond to what... That's all they had to do today, wasn't it? Is respond to what Red Bull were doing. So I think he may have felt it was early, but I think if he watches this race back and sees Bottas's tyre going bang, he's probably going to think, actually, that's not a bad idea. Just responded each time to Verstappen. Verstappen, I've talked about his great start, P7 to P4, P2 by lap 5. What else we got? It does some front wing end plate damage. I think there's a bit of concern about, but didn't really seem to cause too many problems for him. Second stop, just kept trying to pip them to the pit stop, but pretty faultless from both drivers. Both did all they could today, and that's the way to go. Sergio Perez, you touched on it. Little concern with his strategy, wasn't he? He wasn't sure in the race, saying that he felt they could have one stop today. Again, I think, given the blowouts we saw, probably a good idea just to get him in and get that changed. As it turns out, with Bottas retiring, P4 for Perez, massive in the constructors for Red Bull, because they're close to 5 points now. So better safe than sorry, I think is the point there. And just one other thing actually on Red Bull, Christian Horner was summoned to the stewards for, let me read you it. They don't call him Chris, they call him Mr. Horner. Mr. Horner made a statement accusing the flag marshal who waved the double-waved yellow flag at point 16.6 as being a rogue marshal. He got a ticking off, a slap bum, he's off to bed with no tea. Says an official warning is issued to Mr. Horner. So no, well, I was going to no further action. There is action, they've warned him, but he's not getting anything more severe than being sent to bed without his tea and a warning. So, just Christian Horner being Christian Horner. But what did you make of Perez's race, Dan? Because he came through the field at least twice, really, didn't he, from where he was? And I think if you're looking at the two teammates based on performance today and getting the overtakes done quickly and trying to bring themselves back into play, I'd argue Perez a better job than Bottas, honestly. I know Bottas sort of came into it later until he got his puncture, but I think Perez was pretty stellar today.
I agree with you. I think he was, definitely in contention for driver of the day. And I think that's one of his best drives of the season. Yesterday was the stinker. He should not be going out in Q2 at this stage of the season when you're in a championship fight. And I know for him it's not the drivers, but for the constructors, this is Checo's first ever time in any sort of championship battle. And is that pressure there? A little bit, but he's got his seat safe for next season. He knows he's playing a big part. But to still be going out in Q2 in that car that is so, so good, even if it's not quite as quick as the Merc this weekend, that's a problem. And I was a little bit nervous for him at the start of the race today. We've seen different Sergio Perez's this year. We've seen him winning Grand Prix. We've seen him close to Max Verstappen. We've seen him in that midfield fight when he was first getting to the grips with the car. And after yesterday, I thought, I really hope he can put on a special performance. I hope he doesn't get stuck in the midfield and we get to the end of the season and everyone says, well, Red Bull didn't win the championship because of Perez. And that fight back today through the field, not only was he making overtakes exactly when he needed to, he was nice and ruthless when he needed to. He went overboard a little bit. I can't remember quite who it was. I want to say it was Carlos Sainz, where he went
I've
a little bit
got Sainz
too
in my notes.
Yeah.
Perez, so I'm guessing so.
Yeah, where he went a little bit too deep into turn one and Sainz got back past, but then had a great fight with Fernando Alonso, just doing everything he needed to do to get that car forward. And when you look at his parallel at the moment, Valtteri Bottas, and the struggles he had early on, you're right. I think once he got into the groove of the race and the field started to spread out that little bit more, I think Valtteri, after that hurry up, did get the move on and eventually was in that fight for third place until that puncture. But I still think the better of the two was Sergio Perez. And I think, again, when you consider that interesting strategy, yes, I think just playing it safe was definitely something they were considering with Valtteri not scoring points. But when you also throw that into play, and again, he had to work his way back through the field, I I don't want to say he didn't put a foot wrong, because there were a couple of moments, like with the Sainz moment, and he was slightly pushy with Alonso and Ocon, I think. It's just about on the edge, just about okay. But apart from that, a great drive. One of his best of the season for me.
I think I understand why he wanted to go for a one-stopper. And I know that Alonso, we'll talk about him shortly, obviously. I know that he managed to make that work. But the difference between Alonso and Perez is Alonso wasn't having to come through the field 2 or 3 times, was he? He started a bit further up and wasn't involved in quite so much running wide to get moves done or anything like that. So I think it makes sense. Again, with the benefit of hindsight and seeing what happened to Russell, Latifi, Norris and Bottas, it was the right thing to do. But I think that's how I would look at that. But I'm not a strategist. I'd be terrible as a strategist. Do you know how many times I pit people? Do you know how many times I pit on the F1 game for no reason because I want some fresh tyres and end up 18th and I wonder why as I make my 6th stop of the race? Perez, yeah, the battle with Sainz was one that I said put in here was quite spicy because I knew you were coming on, so I thought I'd say that. Outside of turn 1, was pushed wide by Sainz, but totally fair, as we know from Brazil. You can give it a little bit more now, get the elbows out, which Sainz did, managed to keep that position, but Perez got it done the next lap a little bit easier. Pitted lap 20 for the hards. 2.7 second stop, so slow by Red Bull standards, but not really that slow. Got past Vettel into turn 1, lap 23 was a nice little move as well. He made his second stop on lap 41 for the mediums. So I think without the I'm going to be honest, Sky was saying that they think even without the virtual safety car, he wouldn't have caught Alonso. I think he would have done. I think that virtual safety car, again, we'll talk about Fernando in a minute. I think that saved that for Alonso. It was only 2.8 at the end, and that virtual safety car only came in with just over a lap to go. So I think he would have caught him. Not necessarily got past him, but would have caught him. But still, it's big points for Red Bull, crucial points for Red Bull. Valtteri Bottas, God, he annoys me. He really, really does. Bad start, P6 to P11, I think it was, in the end. Was told to go and get those cars by Toto Wolff, went full Arnold Schwarzenegger over the radio. I was just waiting for the quickly get to the chopper. I'm not doing the accent. I was just waiting for that one from him. But no, he fought back once he got that radio message, like you say, Dan. Did what he could, got some good moves done. I think was it? I've got Norris, lap 23, turn 1. Lovely move. I think that was a good move from Valtteri. And then, of course, it was sort of looking up. He was pushing for that podium. Looked like he was going for the one-stopper. And then, bang, tyre exploded. And that was game over. I mean, I've got to give him credit first, Dan. Getting that car back to the pits, I think, was pretty impressive, given that he was in the gravel at one point on effectively 3 wheels.
That was one of the highlights of his race. If you can even call it that today. And I just think a mixed bag from Valtteri, wasn't it? Because qualifying in front of Max, I feel right at the start of the race, his only job was to stay in front of Max. And we've seen it many times with Valtteri. He just can't quite seem to be able to do that. But that start was bad. I've not actually seen exactly what went wrong, whether it was just the launch wasn't great or if he just got caught up in turn 1. So if anyone in chat can let us know, that'd be superb. But either way, he's got to be moving forward. Even if you don't have a bad start, like Perez, you got to be moving forward. You got to be making moves. And I think for most of this season and for the last few years, the general consensus has been that Mercedes isn't good in traffic. But if you look at last weekend, I think the other driver in that Mercedes will have you questioning that statement. So getting caught is not ideal. And fighting for those lower end of the points for so long in that early phase just isn't good enough. And I think that highlights why they want that change, even though recently he has been in a good wave of form. Unlucky with that puncher. I think if there was maybe the 2 Williams cars had their puncher first, he still would have been scoring good points. I think Mercedes would have gone less ruthless on their strategy, trying to cover, I think they were trying to cover Max, weren't they? Hoping they could maybe get a 1-2 at that stage. If they'd have known punches were coming into play, I'm sure they would have gone the 2-stop route. I'm sure they would have been more than happy settling behind Sergio Perez. But that's Formula One. And Valtteri, like we've seen so many times, is right at the front of the queue with that bad luck. And it didn't fall his way today. It wasn't a terrible, terrible race once he got that hurry up and the moves were made. But even still, a DNF at this point of the season really isn't great. And starting 6th, dropping down to 11th, to be honest, when you're in a championship hunt, isn't quite good enough. He's been great recently, so I don't want to be too harsh, but nah, it just wasn't the one today for Valtteri.
I think I'd kind of sum up his. It's hard to sum up his race in one word or in one little sentence. I think he kind of today had 4 different races that I need to assess, which sounds really silly. So early on with the start, pretty shocking. Took quite a while to get through. Then he got the call from Toto and suddenly made his way through. That's point 2. Great. Started to make his way through the field. Then was doing well to get himself up into 3rd place, and it all looked good. And I thought, here we go. This is what we need from Valtteri. This is what we want to see. This is what we keep saying we want to see, Dan, from the number 2 drivers. Bottas is up there. Make the one-stop work. And then the 4th point is tyres went pop. So it's kind of like he didn't just have a straightforward, that was a disappointing, or that was a brilliant race, did he? He kind of had a little bit of everything in there. So, and I must say, not really his fault, or not his fault at all, with the tyre exploding. You could argue he should have pitted, but he can only pit if the team call him in. They've got all the data. But apparently, and it was the case for, I think Norris said it, I think Bottas said it, and I haven't seen the Williams interviews yet, but both of them said that there was no information, it wasn't expected to happen, it was a surprise to them when it went, so it's not like the team even knew. So I think both of them just a little bit unlucky, perhaps with those curbs on the outside, those razor curbs on the outside of the main curbs. Could have been a problem, there could have been debris. I mean, the gravel was like boulders, wasn't it? I mean, God knows what's hidden in there. So yeah, I think that's kind of how I'd sum it up. Unlucky. I've just seen somebody say in chat, Clansome. So yeah, unlucky could be a good one for Bottas, but also, if I'm being really nitpicky, should have been coming through at the same rate of knots as Sergio Perez. Is kind of how to view that for Bottas. But tight one, very, very tight one. Before we roll on, Dan, to everybody else, and get on to Alonso, who I could just talk about all day now. I'm so happy for him. Are you making a call on the championship yet? Or is it just way too close to call? Look at me. You've been back. How long have you been back? 30 minutes, and I'm straight in there.
I'm not doing that yet. Maybe by the end of the stream, but it's definitely way too close to call.
I want to call it, and I want to take a punt, but we'll think about it. We'll see if we can do it during Q&A, have a waffle about it, but I can't really.
Yeah, nice.
It's have some thinking time, because it's a tough one. Again, always say this at this stage. This is just a reaction, not a review. So if we miss something, pop the question to us a little bit later in the stream, and we'll try and cover it. And if we remember, we'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, which is usually what we come out with. Thank you very much to Raz as well. Alonso Tellock on Defend Like a Lion. Max's symbol is a lion, of course. Yeah, I've got that in my notes. I loved that from Fernando. Thank you very much for your contribution, mate. And Emily as well. So you predicted Alonso. Give lottery numbers, please, and thanks. Thank you very much, Emily, for yours as well. Fernando Alonso, P3's back on the podium, Dan. All season, certainly since we saw what this season would be like, at least with, Norris podium, Ocon's win, Ricciardo's win, all I've wanted to see is Fernando Alonso up there on the podium. And I said in my predictions on Thursday, if we get a little bit of drama, I think he can nick a podium today. And there he is, P3. So happy for him. Here's your stat. Crofty kept saying it. I wrote it down because it saves me Googling it. 104 races since his last podium, and he's done it. Are you happy to see him up there, or do you wish he'd just bog off and stop getting these podiums? I'm so chuffed for him, mate. Great drive.
Such a good drive, and I don't think anyone's unhappy for him. That's got to be one of the most popular podiums of the season. Yes, it's Fernando Alonso, and he's got a big fan base. But to make that comeback in a midfield team after that terrible spell with McLaren, and to just, of course, today was pretty incredible. His pace all weekend was so good in that car, which, let's be honest, isn't as quick as the McLaren or the Ferrari. I don't even think, well, definitely all season long, but I don't even think at this venue. I think that Alpine was slower than the AlphaTauri. I think it was slower than the Ferrari, similar to McLaren. But I think Fernando, the way he drove in quali to get, it was P5 initially, wasn't it, on the grid? And then, of course, moved up to P3. Helps a little bit. But then just to have the pace all weekend long to stay fighting for the podium. It wasn't as if we had a Hamilton and Max crash up front, or Perez and Bottas, or there was some kind of major safety car intervention in the middle of the race. There was nothing. There was that one virtual safety car at the end, which I think you're right, definitely helped with Sergio Perez catching. And I had a horrible feeling, I think most of us did, that he was going to get a puncture with those tyres being so old with that one-stop strategy. But even still, he just drove so well, even when Bottas was flying in front of him with no front wing, when Schumacher decided to fly in front of him near the end of the race as well, when he was coming back on track. Just a really strong performance, and once again proving that this comeback was definitely the right decision. To me, it doesn't feel like he's had the last 2 seasons out of Formula One. He's come back and straight away performed. And when you look at that midfield and see that almost every other driver has scored a podium, I think it's just 7 drivers that now haven't scored a podium, 8 if you include Kubica, which is just bonkers. And the fact that Alonso was also on that list before this weekend was slightly nuts, but to put that wrong in the manner he did this weekend was just so good. Yeah, I think everyone's so happy for him.
Kieran David in chat says, not many drivers grab podiums in their rookie season. Obviously took part in the young driver test, didn't he? So there you go. We'll treat him as a rookie. Lovely move to get past Gasly as well on that opening lap. Was close to Verstappen. I did mention it when talking about Max. He kind of came back over to the right. Max was staying on the inside, wasn't he? Alonso came to the right. There's nothing. Max ended up a little bit on the grass, but there's nothing, or the artificial grass, nothing to worry about there. Alonso just won't have expected him to be there. One of those first lap things, so nothing funny there, but just a good move on Gasly. I said a really nice fight with Alonso, I've written in his notes. So Alonso had a really nice fight with himself, apparently, according to my notes, which just renders them completely useless. I mean, if he's going to fight with anyone, why not? But I think my feeling is that virtual safety car at the end, I think Perez, fresher tyres, Alonso having to stay off the curbs as well, of course, because of the concerns over punctures, not pushing his tyres quite so hard at the end. I think Perez may well have got him, and that virtual safety car has helped him out, but that doesn't matter. He's got a podium, and a critical podium as well. And with Ocon in 5th, it's a massive day for Alpine, because now they're at, is it 20... 24, 25 points clear now of AlphaTauri. They went into this weekend level, Alpine on 137 and AlphaTauri on 112. That's a massive result. And I think, all right, I think Alonso said afterwards, or Ocon said afterwards, that AlphaTauri could go to Saudi Arabia and get the same results. It's just as easy for them to do that. But I think Alpine are looking good now for that 5th place, which will devastate Franz Tost, of course. But I think that's a massive swing in the championship. And what a season. I mean, Alpine, I felt, were slow starters. They've had a win. They've got Alonso up there on the podium. Great drive. The only thing I will say is that as close as this battle, as much as this battle might look like it swung Alpine's way, you never know. Because like I say, Alpine were a bit slow starters. They've been fairly consistent with their point scoring. I think they went on the longest run of anybody, so they had a very consistent point scoring, but not sort of top end points, whereas you've seen Gasly quite often up there, and you could probably argue if Tsunoda had been a little bit more up to speed this season, it would be closer, if that makes sense. So it could still swing either way, but it's looking good. We've already mentioned the line from Alonso over team radio, tell Esteban to defend like a lion. It didn't look like he was defending like a lion. Down into turn 1 as Perez made the move. What I will say, though, is he came back at him, didn't he, Dan? He gave it everything, did Ocon. They were side by side, so close to banging wheels. It was fantastic stuff. He did all he could. And even from, remove Fernando's podium, I don't want to, but let's just do that for a second. 5th place for Ocon is still a fantastic result for Alpine. Great drive from him as well. Both drivers superb today.
Yeah, and I think you're right in the sense that they've been a strangely consistent team where they have scored points. They've just not been very good points, and other teams have been outscoring them when you put 2 weekends together. So maybe Alpine score points one weekend and Ferrari don't, but then the next weekend Ferrari score big and Alpine are still scoring small. So with the whole season in view, I think they'll be annoyed even if they're 5th. I think they would have liked to really push on and challenge Ferrari and McLaren. But either way, this weekend is the focus today, and that's a nuts result. That's so good. 3rd and 5th. It's, of course, not as good as Hungary, but like I mentioned with Alonso, there wasn't the carnage that we saw in Hungary. We didn't see big names getting taken out at the start of the race. This is on pace. They're finishing this race only behind Hamilton, Verstappen, and Perez in between, and that is something special for that team. They've been helped out slightly with punches in the case of Esteban Ocon, but third for Alonso on pace is so, so special for them. And again, that 10 points with Ocon, Gasly not scoring at all, despite starting on the front row. And I think your assessment of Tsunoda is definitely bang on. If he'd have been getting up to speed that a little bit earlier on in the season, would have been a slightly bit cleaner driver this season, I think Alpine would have a lot more headaches right now. But either way, going into these last two races with a 25-point buffer, it's going to take some carnage races, some seriously tasty races to see that turn around. 25 points is a race win. And even if Gasly is finishing fourth in both races, that's 24 points. That's not enough. And we've seen with Yuki Tsunoda, he's just about got the pace for Q3, but when push comes to shove in the race, it's not quite been there. And you're right with Ocon. That defending with Sergio Perez, I don't think Checo was expecting that. And I think throughout the entire race, every time Perez was making a move, except I would say with Carlos Sainz, it was pretty straightforward. It was down towards turn one, around the outside, down the inside, easy as you like. He had a battle with Leclerc, I want to say, in the middle of the circuit when Leclerc was on old tyres. But apart from that, it was pretty plain sailing until Esteban Ocon. And it really did feel like just the reverse of Hungary when Alonso was defending for his life against Hamilton. It felt like Ocon really tried to repay that favour. And I think he's really done himself proud with that defending. I think Checo was on the edge as well, pushing him slightly wide a couple of times, but I don't want to start post-Brazil talk again. That's how it is now. We've got to expect it. It's the Kevin Magnussen style of racing that we either love or hate. But either way, Ocon gave as good as he got at that phase of the race. And certainly at the moment, we're not sure would it have been a podium for Alonso or not without that virtual safety car. But I think if Ocon didn't fight like he did, it definitely would have been a podium for Sergio. So just another great day for Alpine today. They would have just probably preferred they would have had a few more this season, because apart from this in Hungary, that consistency in terms of big points hasn't quite been there.
No, and it's interesting to say about they've done that on pace. Even if you were to say, let's throw Perez on the podium and Bottas fourth, no problems for them, it's still fifth and sixth. It's still a really great result. So it's you bang on. It's been on pace this weekend. I think they were probably my surprise of the weekend, even though I'd picked Alonso for a podium in my predictions because I was desperate to see him up there. And with, next time in Saudi, different track, but we don't know anything about it. Nobody does. Experience like Alonso's could be quite telling. It could be important. So fantastic for them. Great from both. It's funny, actually, before he'd done his sort of defending against Perez for Alonso, all I had in my Ocon notes was pit end lap 24, which would have been such great insight, and you'd have all been so happy to hear that. So fantastic stuff from both of them. Big weekend. Lance Stroll as well, I want to give a shout out to. 6th place today. We're going to talk about him as well. I'm not just going to say Lance Stroll 6th, let's move on. But Lance Stroll 6th place, 7 tenths behind Ocon at the end, which was... I don't know if I'm trying to work out if that was him. He closed in by 2 tenths. So that would have been Stroll closing in on Ocon, wouldn't it? So really good drive from him. And some decent points for Aston Martin, because it's been quite a while since we've seen them really have a great result. They've kind of become, I think me and Stuart were saying, if it wasn't last week, it was the week before, they've become a little bit anonymous, and they've almost kind of not given up on this season, but just accepted that 7th is where they're going to be, so everything's focused on next year. So for a 6th place for Lance Stroll and a 10th place for Sebastian Vettel, that's a really great result for them, and I'm actually quite happy to see them up there, because it feels like a while since we've seen a decent result from them. You're all going to tell me, well, don't forget Vettel did win the race last time out, Sean, or something like that. But moment of the race for me, honestly, for Lance Stroll at least, was a 3-wide moment with Bottas and Tsunoda down that straight when it looked like Bottas was going to get that double overtake, and Stroll managed to, I was going to say brave it out around the outside. It wasn't quite as dramatic as that, but get past Tsunoda and keep Bottas at bay to take that position was such a really, really lovely moment. And as well, kind of frustratingly, great for Alpine, frustrating for Stroll. He had a slow stop of 4.1 seconds and he was 7 tenths behind Ocon at the end. That's probably cost him P5 today. So, but I think he could be pretty chuffed with that one, definitely. And Seb Vettel was wide at turn 1. I haven't seen a replay of his start yet, because obviously we've gone live, so I've not seen it. But apparently he was quite wide at turn 1, which gave him a bad start, and that dropped him right down through the field, didn't it? So to recover to 10th place, I think it's a great recovery, and he's another one that had a great battle with Sergio Perez for a lap or two. So nice and racy the Astons this weekend, but sort of look at Vettel their 10th and that disappointing start. Could have been, without being the Debbie Downer as you call it, Dan, it could have been even better for Aston than that. And I think, was it Vettel? Have we got the Pirelli things yet? Actually, I'll just check that. I think one of the Astons went pretty long in that race, which I know, Dan, is your favourite Aston Martin strategy. Let's have a look.
So, in general.
Vettel went 26 laps on the softs, which was longer than anybody else. The next closest was Norris on 25 laps. So, they did your favourite strategy, Dan. You've got to be happy with that, mate. Surely.
I am happy, and I think Seb getting a point after being 17th after lap 1 is a quite nice little comeback drive. Starting in the top 10 and finishing 10th, though, that's not the best. But again, the comeback drive side of things, great. And was it Seb? I think it was. You had a great fight with George Russell around the outside of turn 1. That was a really nice and punchy fight that we don't get to see often enough with Seb. But saying that, he's leading the overtake standings, isn't he? Or is it Alonso? Him, Alonso, and Raikkonen all together going for that little mini championship.
The most important championship, of course.
The most important championship, yeah. And somehow the closest championship this year, which is extra bizarre to say. But you're right, Aston are in this weird state of limbo this year where, like Alpine, they've scored points. I feel like most weekends they're in the points. It's just not very good points. And with his result today, that's got to be one of Lance Stroll's best results this season in terms of where he's finished. And one of the best points hauled for Aston Martin all year long, except Baku. So they can be, of course, happy with today. And I think, kind of just to follow on with what you and Stuart have said over the last few race weekends, it wouldn't surprise me if they've moved on to next year. I'm sure all teams have, but just their entire focus, it wouldn't surprise me if they've moved on. Whereas Alpine and Alfa Tauri have got their fight, Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull, not so much Williams, Alfa and Haas, but Aston are kind of in this weird world of their own where they're 50 points in front of Williams, they're 40 points or so behind Alfa Tauri. They're not going anywhere. Even if they win the last two races, they're going to move up one position in the championship. They haven't really got a lot left to fight for. It'd be lovely if they got some big results. It'd be great for them if they could get one of their drivers into the top 10. But even just looking at that, actually, Seb's about 30 points behind Alonso. So their season, without being too rude, is done. These two races will kind of just be to get things ready, to try and get some big results, to maybe get some nice and flashy statistics for the end of the year. But it has been a difficult season. And to get a result like this at this point of the year, to not get a puncher, to have lovely bit of strategy going on with both cars, that's a nice little confidence booster. But I think overall, it's not going to make a lot of difference for this year. But again, confidence is a nice thing to have going into next year.
You've made me go and do some research. And by research, I mean pulled up Wikipedia. That is Lance Stroll's best result of the season. His previous best was 7th in Italy. So good shout, Dan. Was that a guess?
Thank you. Well, I knew he'd scored a lot of points, but they're just not very good points. So it was a bit of a guess, but I knew it couldn't be much better.
Well, yeah, true. So that's actually Stroll's best result of the season. So definitely a massive shout out for him. But yeah, like you say, I think from an Aston Martin point of view, that's, their season's been done for a while. They're still there racing, of course they are. I've got the press release here. Actually, just double check I've not missed anything major from either driver. Lance Stroll saying the car felt good today, happy with performance, made up a couple of places on lap 1. Nothing really. Overtook Yuki on the mediums. Undercut Carlos Sainz. Everything went perfectly for us today, and scoring 8 points at the end of this triple header is a very satisfying reward for all our hard work. And Sebastian Vettel said the race start proved very costly. We were basically at the back, as Dan said, down in P17. On the approach to turn 1, there were lots of cars around me, and I was squeezed. I tried to go around the outside, but the track was dirtier, get your glasses on, Sean, than expected, and I slid wide. It is frustrating because the car was quick, as we saw with Lance Stroll, of course. So, yeah, slid wide in turn 1 on the dirty side of the track, but still, it's points on the board. It's something for Aston to to enjoy this weekend. Definitely. Ferrari, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz. Where were they? I've lost them. Where's my thing gone? I've lost them. They were 7th and 8th, following each other around as they tend to do this season. I think it was Jensen Button in the post Sky thing. I was listening to that getting the stream ready. Listening to that getting the stream ready. He said that he thinks that Carlos Sainz will be more disappointed with that result than Leclerc, because Sainz, of course, started 5th and ended up down in 7th today, whereas Charles Leclerc started a bit further down, had to have his chassis replaced as well, didn't he? Because he had a crack in that and ended up further down, and he managed to come through into 8th place. So I don't think Leclerc was over the moon with the result, but I think he was very happy that he managed to recover to 8th place. But I think from Ferrari's point of view, it's another massive weekend in that fight with McLaren. And I'm going to say it, Dan, I can't remember. I think the last time you were on, McLaren were looking very, very good for P3. What's happened, mate? It's gone. What is it? Nearly 40 points. 58, 68, 78, 88, 90. Yeah, nearly 40 points is the gap now. Is that it? Is that done?
Well, yeah, I think it might be. And you're not wrong. When I was last on, McLaren had just scored their first victory since 2012. And that race I was last on, Norris had nicked the podium and almost made it back-to-back victories for McLaren. So to now be here and it to be almost the exact reverse, not Ferrari winning, but very much in control of that 3rd place in the constructors, is quite strange. And my recollection of the last few events, it seems to have just happened out of nowhere. Ferrari have been so consistent over the last few Grand Prix, and I think those 4th and 5th places have been mounting up. And Danny Rick, I don't think he's been terrible, but he seems to have slipped back a little bit into that early season form. And Norris hasn't quite been able to get those big results. He was looking good this weekend until that puncher. That seems like a bit of a killer, that one today. That was going to be a nice bit of momentum for Norris, I think. This result today didn't come into play, but of course, he had that race pace, but that gap is huge. That gap is so big. And like we've said with other teams, having a gap that's about 40 points, that's over a race victory. Yes, Ferrari and McLaren are going to be fighting for more points than when we were having the conversation about AlphaTauri, Alpine and Aston. But either way, that's going to have to be not only some big results for McLaren, but also some terrible results for Ferrari. And with just 2 races left to play, I just don't see that happening. I could see maybe in the Drivers' Championship, the gap between Leclerc and Norris is 1 point. I can see that one ebbing and flowing for the next few races. Even Sainz isn't a million miles away, 6.5 points off his teammate. All 3 of those I can see fighting for 5th in the standings. But in terms of the constructors, Ferrari have been on such a wave of form in that midfield. And with 2 street circuits this year, they've had both pole positions. Is that going to happen next time out? Probably not, but I think they've got a good car for the next 2 races, and it would really surprise me if there was a change in the constructors to see McLaren go P3.
Yeah, 39.5 points to be specific. I got my calculator out, Dan, because apparently I couldn't minus half a point from 40. 39.5 points is the gap, so I think... it could still swing if McLaren finds the form again. Sudeep actually just said in chat, they became complacent. Ferrari was still making upgrades. McLaren was sleeping. So maybe there is that, because it's all since Ferrari got that power unit upgrade. So it's a big difference. It's a shame, because I thought that was going down to the wire with the championship and with the battle between Alpine and AlphaTauri. But it's almost like the F1 gods have come together this weekend so that all we really have to focus on is the championship fight between Mercedes and Red Bull, and Hamilton and Verstappen. So I don't know, maybe it could still swing. If we come out of Abu Dhabi and AlphaTauri are ahead of Alpine and McLaren have turned it around against Ferrari, God knows what the top of the championship is going to look like, because that is one hell of a swing, because something's happened somewhere. So that's fine. Let's have a bit of that. It'd be great. Again, unknowns in Saudi Arabia, could go either way for everybody. So we'll see. Nice little double stack in the pits that I think was forced on Ferrari, because Carlos Sainz had some radio issues, couldn't hear the pit call, and so went round again, and then it didn't sound like great team radio, didn't look like it was failing, so ended up pitting, and then Leclerc came in afterwards. So that was well executed from Ferrari. One thing I have got written is lock up at turn 1, which I can't remember who was battling with. I should have written them down. I thought I'll remember that, but no. But locked up into turn 1 with the lead. I can't remember who it was up there, but I think that was after. That was when with the radio stuff messing about, all of that business. Kind of got it. Yeah, doesn't matter. He still scored points today. Actually, that fight between Leclerc and Sainz, aside from obviously the championship battle, I think that's been my favourite fight this season. There's just nothing between them, just a few points. So I think that one will go down to the wire. Probably jinx that now, but great result for Ferrari in their battle with McLaren. But I think they. Do you feel, just quickly, Dan? Do you feel like they could have got more from this weekend? Do you think maybe those issues with Leclerc, well, they obviously have cost them, but do you think Sainz shoulda, woulda, coulda, I guess, been higher if you've got the Alpines up there 3rd and 5th?
Ooh, I think so. I mean, I think the point of the fact that they're in front of McLaren is going to be their main target, and they've done that with both cars. So in theory, it can't get much better. But at the same time, I do think they've got the 3rd quickest car. I think they do have a better car than Alpine. I think with Sainz starting where he did, and if Leclerc didn't have those issues in quali, they'd have been hoping to be right behind the Mercedes and the Red Bull. And with Valtteri having his DNF, I think they would have loved to have been fighting for the podium, or at least 4th and 5th. So yeah, there will be, I'm sure, some disappointment. But again, that main focus for them will be McLaren, and that's the only thing they're fighting for right now. And so if that means for the last few races not getting the best results, but just maintaining that points gap, I'm sure they will be very happy come the end of the season.
Yeah, let's talk McLaren then, because it wasn't a bad race for Lando Norris, was it? For the most part, he was doing well. He was up there, sort of. I think it was 4th place. Now Perez could have got him, maybe. Probably would have got him, but he would still have been top 5. But it was a puncture that saw him in the pits late on, having to obviously change tyres as a result of that. So it's really hard to read. Just on what we're saying there about Ferrari, should they have done better? Yeah, maybe, but McLaren would have done better without that puncture. So it was so costly for Lando Norris, wasn't it? Because he would have been P5, which is 10 points. And all right, Ferrari have still got a healthy lead, but that kind of changes the picture a little bit. It would have been tight to go into those last couple of races. So I'm really, really quite disappointed for him, because I think he raced well today, Norris. Pitted end of lap 25. Like I say, the only driver that went longer on that first stint was Sebastian Vettel. So, that's great from him. And then the tyres failed on lap 50, which is really quite weird, because he went from the soft tyre, which did 25 laps, but then a hard tyre didn't even make it 25 laps before it blew up. When you think that would be the more durable tyre, wouldn't you? So it'll be interesting to see if he's picked something up. I know we'll get some more from the teams, and that Pirelli will release their information. The teams will obviously investigate that, and we'll get a final answer either way. But quite weird that the soft tyre can do that, but the hard can't.
Might have ran into one of those boulders that were rolling around in the circuit. I mean, that's the only thing I could hazard a guess, that maybe he went a bit wide in one of the curbs, a little bit like he did in FP2, was it? Or FP1, where he went really wide on the penultimate corner and just the car conked out. That was not a pretty sight, but it's just a funny end to the season for McLaren, isn't it? I think ever since Sochi, it's just not come together for them one way or another. The pace hasn't been there. I think a couple of people in chat saying they've been a bit lazy recently. Ricciardo's not been great. I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong, but I just don't think that car is particularly strong at the moment. With Ferrari getting better, with that engine upgrade already, that 6 cars that by default are going to be in front of you, and that Alpha Tauri car, I think, is pretty much level on pace with that McLaren at the moment. Gasly driving as good as ever. Tsunoda's been sneaking into Q3. The race pace hasn't quite been there. So I think by default, even admitted by Norris himself today, they were expecting maybe sneaking into the top 10. Definitely didn't think that they were going to be able to get through on the mediums, which they weren't able to do. I think it's going to be a tough end to the year. And for Norris today, that drive, I think, is one of his best for a while. Looked really, really strong fighting in that midfield, holding on to that front group, overtook Pierre Gasly, didn't he, in those early stages? A nice little move into turn one. All of that just seemed to be going so well. And then that puncher, which, of course, no one was predicting today. You mentioned it earlier on. Teams and drivers were just out of the blue getting punches. There was no kind of telemetry to say they were going to happen. We haven't seen any onboards with Norris to see if there was actually any delaminating or anything like that, whether he was just instantly, there was that tire pressure went down, they called him in and managed to catch it early. We're not really too sure. But for Danny Rick, another quiet one. I couldn't really tell you a lot about his weekend this time out. I don't want to say it was bad because that's where he qualified. That's just what his pace is at the moment, which of course isn't fantastic. But when the car isn't performing to how you like, when your teammate all year long has had the edge in that car, I don't really know if I should be expecting more. I don't know, a funny one for McLaren at the moment, and all that momentum they had in the first half of the season just seems to have really fizzled out, which is a shame.
It's interesting to say about Daniel Ricciardo. I've got something written in my notes here, and I want everyone just to take a deep breath. This is big, okay? He pitted at the end of lap 26. And I can expand on that now. I've got the Pirelli thing. He went from the mediums to the hards, and the hards did 30 laps. I can't remember seeing much of him, which is kind of weird. I don't know why that feels really weird. I thought I'd have seen more of Daniel Ricciardo, but he kind of had a bit of an anonymous race, which I think, to be honest, he's not had the best of luck at times this season. But you know, he had the win in Monza, then he was fourth in Russia, which are, you know, great results. Disappointing weekend in Turkey for 13th, then fifth in the USA. It looked like he sort of, you know, apart from his weekend in Turkey, things were looking up, and then it's 12th DNF 12th. It's just, I don't know how much of that is Daniel Ricciardo and how much of that is, as people have said, McLaren maybe sleeping a little bit, or, you know, other people have overtaken them and the car's not underneath them at the moment. I don't know. It's just really quite weird. So I'm just going to read actually a couple people in chat. So thank you everyone in chat, because this will answer this one for me. Chris says fuel issues, and that's how I'm reading that. Logan said fuel saving for some reason. Neeraj Mary, thank you very much for yours as well. Ricardo had fuel issues. He was fuel saving in the early part of the race, and he had fuel issues, so thank you very much. That explains where his pace was today, but definitely didn't see much of him. But 22 seconds behind Pierre Gasly is about all I can say. So he had fuel issues, he made a pit stop and ended up 22 seconds behind Gasly in P12. Not really much else to say. So yeah, maybe a bit bad luck again for Danny Rick then, by the sounds of it, Dan. That sort of answered that one a bit. So, I mean, it's not been the season I expected from Daniel Ricciardo, but he is a race winner. I mean, if you'd have offered him that at the start of the season, he'd have taken it. But I'm also pretty sure he'd rather have had a bit more consistency. I say more consistency. I'm just looking again at Wikipedia. I mean, he scored points in the opening 4 races. Scored points in 6 of the opening 8. I mean, you know, he wasn't awful, just not anywhere near where his teammate was, which I suppose you could expect because Lando's had a bit more time in that team, hasn't he? And a bit more time in that car. So thank you to everyone who pointed out the fuel issues, because I've not put that in my notes. I've missed that somewhere, or I've not seen it. So yeah, just I think that's it for P3, unless Ferrari bottle it. I mean,
again, though,
if any team's gonna,
yeah, if any team's gonna, but even if Ferrari scores 0 points in the next 2 races, that's an awful lot of points McLaren have to get
true.
when their car isn't the 3rd quickest at the moment.
Yeah, let's say 40 points they'd need. They would have got a race win, haven't they? So they wouldn't, but let's say they need 40 points. Assuming the top 4 finish, that means you've only got 5th and 6th as your best finish available. What's that? 10 and 8. That's 18 points. Yeah, that's not even 40, is it? So
no,
they're going to need a lot of luck to do that. So I will call that one. I think that's Ferrari, but still, Andreas Seidel, I said it in the preview, actually made the point that it's not just championship position that defines how good a season's been. McLaren have definitely made a step forward this year, and I think they are a team to keep an eye on for next season, definitely. So I think they'll be disappointed not to get 3rd, but it's not like they've had a bad season. And you back to the Ricciardo point, forgetting today and the fuel issues. If you've been a bit more up there with Lando in the latter part of this season, there'd have been like Sainz has been with Ferrari, they'd have been fighting with two drivers rather than just one. So there we go. Pierre Gasly, P11. What happened to him today? P2 on the grid after penalties, which he ironically kind of caused. P2 got beaten early on by Fernando Alonso. Didn't quite have enough on those soft tyres on the dirty side of the grid to challenge Hamilton, who did come across to cover him quite nicely, but just not really anything brilliant, which has really cost AlphaTauri today, and really weird for Pierre. He's if you were going to say an AlphaTauri driver's going to have a disappointing weekend, with all due respect to him, bless him, you'd be saying, oh, Tsunoda again. You just expect Gasly to be up there, but you did mention it earlier. We're going to make the question. I'm going to read it as it is in my notes. It was after, obviously, Pierre had gone wide. First things first, Verstappen would have got him eventually, for sure. But secondly, I've just written, ooh, that was convenient. It's just, I think he probably did genuinely run wide, but it just looked a little bit under control for running wide. But there you go. Verstappen would have got him anyway, but just disappointing not to see the pace there. And I'm sure you're going to tell me now, Dan, something wonderful that I've missed about Pierre Gasly. But he just sort of kept going backwards, didn't he? And couldn't really challenge with those ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I did have something lovely to say. I mean, the first man to start, or French man to start on the front row of the grid since Romain Grosjean. So, I heard his name a few times today, which was lovely. But that's about where the smiles ended for Gasly today, which is such a shame after the run of form he's on and another incredible season he's had in that car. But from the word go, obviously lost out to Alonso on the start. Tried to challenge Hamilton around the outside of turn 1, but Alonso nicked him at turn 2 and fell backwards. Whatever you want to say that was with Verstappen happened, and then Norris got him, and it just seemed like he was falling through the field on those soft tyres. They committed with both cars to the 2-stop. And I think actually that decision to pit Yuki so early, one of the first, if not, I think he was the first driver to stop, wasn't he? Yeah. Really early on. And then Gasly also really on, committing that early to this 2-stop. But then more importantly, just getting stuck in so much traffic. I think because the fact that turn 1 was pretty much the only place to overtake, and you did need a fair chunk of pace differential to get that move done, I think that just ruined them on strategy. Because by the time Alonso, Perez, Norris, all the drivers that Gasly were fighting came in, Gasly was about 10 seconds down the road when they'd all made their first stops. And I think from there, it never really recovered. And of course, had already committed to the 2-stop and wasn't able to sneak back in the top 10. I think was close to Seb at the checkered flag. But when you consider where he started, and even Norris, who had a puncher and did 2 stops, also finishing in front of him, that's not great. And for Yuki starting 8th, having similar troubles with just going backwards off the start and committing to that 2-stop that just didn't work out. What a weird day that must be for them. From the elation of 2nd and 8th on the grid to scoring nothing and Alpine getting a 3rd and 5th, that's a real stinker for them today, which is a shame. Again, considering how good they've been recently and how quick that car, well, the pace generally is compared to other teams in that midfield.
Yeah, Pierre, not much to say, really. Says was giving it everything that he had inside the car today, but we were just too slow. Even at the start, I wasn't able to stick with Alonso, so they tried to go for an aggressive 2-stop strategy, but the pace just wasn't there. It didn't work today. He did make the point, though, which I think is a fair point. He said, after the incident yesterday, we changed some parts on the car. I don't know if those could have impacted on our race today. So maybe some of the damage that was caused yesterday in qualifying, running over that curb, front wing, of course, coming off, and then giving him a puncture, maybe that's played a part in that. But I mean, I'm not an engineer. I don't know how big a difference that would make. We've seen before, little things get changed and drivers suddenly are super quick, and other times they fall away. So it could have been an impact. Interesting point. And then Yuki Tsunoda, he was the first guy to pit, actually. You bang on, Dan. I've written down for him outside of Russell at turn 1, which was a nice move. Again, didn't see a huge amount of him, which isn't a great surprise, but he said that it was a particularly tough race. I struggled a lot on the soft tyre, especially in the first stint. We really weren't expecting that, as overall this week we've had really good pace. But today in the race it dropped off, so we've got to look at the data and figure out why that was. So, yeah, and he does make reference, of course, to Alpine getting a very good race as well. So they need a strong comeback in the final 2 races. And just check what Jody Eggington is saying. Okay, so Yuki Tsunoda, obviously both drivers struggled with tyre degradation. Yuki's first stint was compromised when a visor tear-off became stuck on the rear wing. And that caused a loss of load and balance. And that's why they needed to pit earlier to get rid of that so they didn't completely destroy their race. So, but yeah, Yuki's bang on, isn't he? The pace was there in qualifying. They looked good. I mean, Gasly was the top 3 in 2 of the 3 practice sessions at least. I didn't catch FP3, so I'm not sure on that one, but he definitely was in at least 2 of the 3. So the pace was clearly there for AlphaTauri, but just not in the race. So maybe that tear-off has compromised Yuki's race, which has forced him onto an earlier 2-stopper, which has kind of destroyed it for him. And then maybe it could be something like the parts that were changed on the car for Gasly. I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just trying to think of a reason how their pace just fell away so quickly and almost so randomly. Because I thought with Gasly, if I had to put, obviously I predicted Alonso because I wanted him to get P3 this weekend. But if I was to put money looking at that grid at the start of this race of one of those to be on the podium, it would be Pierre Gasly based on the pace we'd seen previously in the weekend.
And even just over the last few weekends. I mean, not only has Gasly and AlphaTauri appeared to be just clear of Alpine, they just seem to have been clear of everyone in that midfield. So you're right, something just seems off. Whether that was just the strategy and the medium tyres not working out for them and just being forced to run a little bit longer when they didn't want to, I don't know. I definitely think going for the undercut, which they kind of highlighted at the start of the race, wasn't the way to go, didn't help. And I think just the nature of the circuit with everyone following so closely, when you then do your pit stop so early and get caught in traffic, there's not those nice gaps to slot into. I don't think that helped them, but I definitely don't think that really paints the full picture of what went wrong today, because to have 2 cars comfortably in the top 10 in qualifying and then to not score points when you stuck with the strategy you'd planned to do, that's not right. I think there's definitely more to the story than that. I'm sure we won't find out what it is.
Oh, no.
Such is the world of Formula One. But yeah, I'm with you on this one. I think there's more to the story here.
Alfa Romeo, we barely ever see anything of Alfa Romeo, Haas, or Williams unless Williams are pulling off a mega weekend. It's so frustrating when you get to this point of the stream because I never really know what to say. But I've got the press releases through for a change, so that's good. So Kimi Raikkonen move around the outside of Nicholas Latifi at turn 1. Very nearly, I don't want to say nearly contact, but it was flipping close between the two of them. But that was a nice moment for Kimi. He said in his press release that, as I punch my mic, apologies, says, I was surprised by the overtakes we could do. Do you know what, Kimi? We all flipping are. I was so surprised by how much overtaking we saw. All right, DRS, of course, but still, overtaking is overtaking. I didn't expect much at the beginning, perhaps to be able to race with some people as the car was pretty much the same as yesterday. But we had a good start, and then things kept improving as the race went on. I had some good battles, and by the end, we were catching the McLaren and AlphaTauri ahead. I think we got everything we could out of that race. So P14, catching the AlphaTauri McLaren ahead. He was as well. Kimi Raikkonen, 126.5 was his final lap. Tsunoda, a 128.1, and Ricciardo, a 129.0. So actually, just skimming through the field. I don't know how the virtual safety car has impacted this, of course, so take this with a pinch of salt. But final laps of the race, Kimi Raikkonen on the last lap was on the pace of Sergio Perez in 4th, which is a nice little thing to round up there for Kimi Raikkonen. Antonio Giovinazzi, I've literally got pitted lap 16. Bless him. Never see poor Gio. Obviously, his third to last race, if you want to say it that way, for Alfa Romeo, and probably, if I'm honest, in Formula One. Said we did the maximum we could. I don't think anything more than P15 was possible. We had a great first lap, gaining 4 places, then we just had some nice battles for the rest of the evening. Finished ahead of both the Haas and the Williamses, and I suppose that's the best they can do in that one, and that's what they've delivered. We went for a 2-stopper as we knew the tyre degradation was high and the curbs were hard, and at the end we were quicker than our rivals, so there you go. He's satisfied is the word he's used for his race. And again, he was a 131.6, so maybe, I don't know how the virtual safety car played out with that one. It could have affected those times, but I don't really know what to say, Dan. on Alfa's race, unless you've got something you want to add. But I think that's pretty much them covered because, again, we don't see much. Nice little picture there, look, of Gio battling with Ricciardo.
I don't remember that happening. I think that must
Don't
have
remember
been
seeing either
Ricardo.
of them.
Yeah, right. No, not really much to add on Alfa Romeo. They're such a strange team in terms of pace because if I remember rightly, Raikkonen was up to P12 at the start, just one place behind Bottas. He's been on fire with some of his starts this season. Gonna miss those next year. For Gio, I'm slightly worried that he was behind Schumacher for a lot of the race. And I think it was only Schumi's late, excursion into the gravel that Gio was able to overtake him again. Not sure why that was. Don't know if that was on strategy. I just remember seeing quite late on that Schumacher was in front of Giovinazzi and thinking, well, that's not supposed to happen. But I'm sure there's, again, more to the story on that one that we didn't get to see, thanks to the camera people. But no, just another quiet race for Alfa Romeo. I don't see them overtaking Williams at this point of the season, unless, like we've said a few times, there's some crazy end to the season. And I think they're safe from Haas as well. So I think for both drivers, enjoying the racing they can do in the last couple of Grand Prix is going to be their main thing. But no, another quiet day for them.
You think they're safe from Haas. What are you expecting in the last two races?
Well,
Haas bring the 22 car early.
I don't know. They might put Grosjean back in the car and then they might get a podium. You never know.
You never know. He did have like 1 million, apparently. As you keep telling me. No, we'll do that later. We'll talk about Gio later. We'll get through this first and then we'll do the driver market talk and all that business. Williams and Haas. Actually, no, Haas and Williams. Actually, not Williams and Haas. Mick Schumacher finishing ahead of George Russell and Nikita Mazepin. Shock horror, I know, today. But Mick, you mentioned now, had Giovinazzi behind him for much of it. Pitted end of lap 22. He was wide turn 15, and he was quite close, wasn't he, when he came back onto Fernando Alonso? And by close, I don't mean he was about to wipe him out, but closer than Fernando Alonso would have wanted, given that he was trying to hang on to third place at that point of the race. So probably a bit of a hairy moment there for Mick. But I think he's got to be happy. I know that Russell had the puncture and Latifi got the puncture, but even with that, he's kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, but he's kind of making my point for me that all Haas can do in that car, all Schumacher and Mazepin can do is try and get to the end, and if something ahead of them happens, they might get a result. Okay, 16th and beating a Williams doesn't sound exciting, but to Haas, that's their battle, that's their mini victory, and that's exactly what they did. They got to the end of the race, and he managed to finish ahead of George Russell because of Russell's problems, but if he doesn't finish, he doesn't get that 16th place, if you catch what I'm saying. So I think he's got to be pretty happy with that one. Nikita Mazepin, I have literally nothing in my notes for Mazepin except for Maz. That is it. That is all I have in my notes for Mazepin. We never see him, do we? What I will say, though, is it looks as though, I checked with the Pirelli thing, he pitted on lap 31 to move on to the soft tyre, and this could be virtual safety car related, but his final lap was a 127.3. For comparison, Esteban Ocon's was a 127.9. Fernando Alonso's was a 128.3. Mazepin was flying on his soft tyres towards the end there. It was quicker than a good chunk of the field. But again, that could be virtual safety car related. I've got nothing to say, Dan, other than reiterating my point, which is that, and we've said this how many times this season? Have you been keeping count? I don't know. But all Schumacher and Mazepin can do is take that car to the end and hope something happens. And that's, again, what they've done today.
Yeah, it's like Roy Keane always says. That's his job.
No. We're not talking football, please.
That's his job. Sorry, that's the last time I'll mention United today until we're off stream.
I was going to say, I bet it isn't.
Yeah, not really much more to add. I think with Mazepin, just a nightmare of a weekend, which wasn't really his fault. I think he said before qualifying he'd done 10 flying laps throughout practice. Just the amount of nightmares they had. 2.5 seconds off your teammate in quali isn't good, but if you're only doing 10 laps in practice, that's as good as an excuse you're going to get. And in the race, it's just same old Mazepin, not quite as quick as his teammate. That car, of course, is the worst on the grid. You can't really ask for much more. So yeah, another sad day for Haas, but for them, only 2 more, and then hopefully they're a little bit closer. So they'll just be hoping 2 more races, keep it clean, keep it tidy, and then just forget this year ever happened.
I think they're going to have to, aren't they? To whack themselves on the head with a mallet and just get amnesia. It's been absolutely shocking this season, so bad. But actually, I'd forgotten about all that for Mazepin in practice and all that, the lack of laps. So I think actually I'm going to say, given how little time he'd had in that car, 22 seconds off Russell. All right, Russell made that extra. I'm trying, Nikita. I'm trying. I mean, look, yeah. He did all he could, and he had no running, so I can't really say any more than that. So I think he could be happy that he did the best he could. I was just going to say then, not far behind his teammate. He was, because he was 22 seconds off Russell, who was 45 seconds off Schumacher, so he's a minute behind his teammate. But no track time, a track he's not been at since 2009. Little correction there from my preview. Mazepin was the other driver that's been here. So yeah, I'm just going to move on. George Russell, puncture, left front, lap 50. I mean, that was about all I saw from him as well. Really weird. Williams have fallen off, and I don't know if maybe that's to be expected with other teams, maybe bringing a few more developments than they're saying. I don't know. Tracks perhaps not suiting them, so they're not really where they were earlier in the season when they were bringing in these fantastic results, but they're doing all they can back there. Pitted lap 17, again on lap 49, obviously because of that puncture. Another one, I'll just check the Williams thing. Actually, it might actually have had. Let's see if we've got the Williams one in, because if we have, they might explain a little bit about the tyres and whether or not they had any information on the punctures, because obviously heard from the others, but not from Williams. So what's George said? Aggressive strategy today, and we were trying to push our final stint as long as possible. The real high-speed right-handers at the circuit, the tyres were always going to push their limits, but we had to be aggressive. Unfortunately, the left front tyre punctured a few laps from the end, so it's one of those things. It was a shame for our race, but ultimately it's nothing gained, nothing lost. Dave Robson, just have a quick skim through while I'm live, see if there's anything in there. Just want to know. Stuff of the late punch in the race was a shame. Nicholas's was especially annoying as it happened shortly after the pit entry and meant he couldn't get back to the pit lane, so that was frustrating for him. He ended up retiring, of course. Nothing in there. So unless, let me know in chat if somebody said something on the TV interviews, but in the press release, nothing in there that specifically says we had no warning. But given that everyone else is saying there was no warning, I won't be surprised. It kind of came out of nowhere, didn't it? But disappointing, obviously, Latifi, like I say, having to retire because he couldn't get back around to the pits because he'd already passed the pit entry, which was just awful timing. Kind of like Bottas in Silverstone last year.
Yes.
Sorry,
you're
Dan.
right. Yeah, no, that's. I was thinking, I don't remember that last year, but yeah, that seems like such a long time ago. You're right. It's been a strange time for Williams at the moment. Their pace, I don't know if it ever was there or if they just somehow managed to get some crazy results, because early doors they were better than Haas fighting with Alfa, and I feel that's where they are now, with Russell getting through to Q2 yesterday. I think was a 10th off Ricciardo and Leclerc. So I think there definitely still is some pace in that car. It's just race pace, for whatever reason, just doesn't seem to work out. And I think the only thing I can think of extra to go with G. Russ was what we mentioned with Seb earlier. Had a little fight into turn one, which was quite nice. And then Latifi just doing Latifi things. His streak of beating Russell in qualifying came to an end this weekend, so that was a shame. But no, just another funny weekend for them. And I think, like Haas, will look forward to next year just having a fresh start.
Yeah, I've got nothing more to add. It's just a shame that the punctures came when they did, but as George Russell said in his press release, didn't really make any difference to their race, did it, in the end? It's not destroyed their day. They weren't up in the points or anything, so just one of those things, but a bit concerning, obviously, to see tyres just failing. But at the same time, if drivers and teams are pushing them to their limits and they fail, then, you know, Pirelli put their guidance out for a reason, don't they? It's all, you know, pushing them to the limit, things can go wrong. I'll be interested to see what Pirelli's findings are, but I imagine it'll be something like that. Teams just push them too far on a track they don't really know. Thank you very much as well, by the way. Sorry I missed this, to Jesse Lund. Said, this is for Fernando Alonso. Thank you very much for your contribution. Great result for Alonso. So happy for him. With that in mind, driver of the day. Let me know in chat. One surname. Who is your driver of the day? Official driver of the day is Alonso. I'm sorry, Dan. I'm giving my answer first because I'm not giving this up. I'm giving it to Fernando Alonso. And my second driver of the day is Sean for getting it right on Thursday. All right. So Fernando Alonso is my driver of the day. That means you're going to have to cut with somebody else. I've just realised you've probably not come up with a second one. If you want to say Alonso, that's fine, though, because I think it's hard to argue that.
Oh, I'm not going to break our rules. You know, I'm going to be sensible. If I'm not going to go with Raikkonen either after that rogue choice that one time that I'll never live down. To be honest, I am still very close to giving it to Lewis Hamilton, because I think anyone that close to getting a Grand Slam deserves a shout out. And as much as fastest lap is great, leading every single lap to me is still just a bonkers thing to do. But I'm not going to give it to Hamilton because he didn't get a Grand Slam. I actually am going to give it to Sergio Perez, because I think without him today, it would have been not a stale race, but I think we would have come away thinking, yeah, let's never go back to this track. But because Checo was just so ruthless with those overtakes, every single lap seemed to be getting someone else. And even though he started outside the top 10, being in a position to fight for third for me is something really, really special. You're right, Alonso definitely deserves a shout, and I think would be my driver of the day if you hadn't stolen him. But for me, Checo is so close. I'm more than happy going with Perez.
Yeah, Perez was second on my list, honestly. And then I've got joint third, because I couldn't pick, between Verstappen for his start and coming through to go from 7th to 2nd, and Esteban Ocon, I think, for P5. Honourable mentions, obviously Lewis Hamilton for just being so bloody dominant all weekend, and Lance Stroll for P6. So I managed to whittle my list of about 19 drivers down to 6, which is something, but I can't not give it to Alonso. Let's see what you guys say in chat. I think I know which way this is going to go. Jay Starship says Hamilton. George says Lewis Hamilton. Carola says Alonso. Nathan says Alonso. Let's have a look. AD says Alonso. Kian says Vettel. P10. Interesting shout. Professional moron, nicking my name again. Says Alonso. Alex says Fernando. Hey Ray says Alonso and Perez. Approve, because it wouldn't be a stream without me destroying your name, mate. Says Alonso. I probably need to learn how to pronounce it, but at this point, it's almost just an inside joke, isn't it, mate? So, yeah. Free says Hamilton, then Alonso. Alonso, easy peasy, says nice person. Josh has gone with Alonso. Frederick has gone with Checo. Clansom says Sean. Correct. Charles is amazed I got anything right by the look of it. Why not? Richard says Max. Red Raven says Alonso. No question there. Good point, actually. 17th to 10th for Vettel is a good shout, actually. So that's probably why people are thinking Seb for driver of the day. Plus, pick who you want. Fantaboy15 says Alonso. Sam says Alonso. Raul says Alonso. Emily, she says Latifi. No, she doesn't really. She says Alonso. Taylor says Perez. George has gone with Hamilton. Logan says Lando did well. I think that's fair, actually. It's only the puncture that really ruined his race, wasn't it? He was up there top 5, so looking good. Mary says Perez. Death the Kid says Alonso. Gaming with Steve says Alonso and Seb. Jason says congratulations to Alonso. Justin says Alonso. I think you see where we're going here, Dan. Oscar says, I was just going to say your names now. Oscar, 7 Overland, Justin, Clansom, Matrix says Alonso. They all say Alonso. Matrix also says Vettel. Perez sucked yesterday, so not him. Apparently, AD says Alonso. Wayne says Checo. Ruby says Lewis. AD says Stroll. Neeraj says Stoff, of course. Nando all day long for just me. Charles is excited. We're at 450 likes, 50 to go. Let's try and get that to 500 for Charles, because I want to see how drunk he is by the end of the stream. Frederick says Perez. Ruby says Bottas as well. Sexy Beast says Vettel was great. Taylor says Perez. 3 more. Manny says Alonso. Jack says Hamilton. And Ocon for I can't ever get that right. But yeah, thank you very much for your super chats, your interactions on there. If you've got any questions for us, please do pop them in the chats. Ideally related to the weekend, but if you want to ask us something about the upcoming races or the driver market or ice cream, go for it. I'm not talking about that. I don't want to talk about it. It's been a stressful few days. I don't want to talk about that, or a stressful couple of days. But yeah, any questions, let us know. I'm going to throw one straight to you, though, Dan, because I need you to talk for about 30 seconds because I need to go for a yellow flag. Because I love to put you on the spot as well. Just a few of your thoughts on Gio losing his seat and Guan Yu Zhou taking his place. And I'll be back in 30 seconds, mate.
Okie doke. I'm really mixed about this one. I think Gio's been okay for the last few seasons. I think a lot of you know I've been a champion of Gio on these streams for quite some time. Side note: when he comes back, just spam Ollie at the wheel in the chat. But I think with Gio, he's had his time. He's had 3 years now to give it a really good go, and this year was the year he needed to beat Raikkonen. He needed to be beating him in quali every weekend, in race trim every weekend. And I think it's safe to say this year, on a Saturday, he's been the better of the two Alfa Romeos. But on a Sunday, Raikkonen still has just had the edge, has still been the better of the two, has scored more points. And even when Robert Kubica came in for those few races, I don't think he was a million miles away from Gio, which is, again, a shame because I like him. I think he's a fun character in the paddock. I think it's nice that there's at least one Italian driver on the grid. But at the same time, I do think someone else deserved that seat. That's when the next question comes in. Is Guan Yu Zhou the right man? If I'm honest, I don't think he's the wrong man. I think Oscar Piastri definitely is the better of the two. I think he will win F2 this year, but he is an Alpine Academy driver. He's a driver that Alpine want to keep. They were happy to let Guan Yu Zhou move on and get that opportunity with Alfa Romeo, whereas Alpine, I think very much with Piastri being that reserve driver for next year at Alpine, he's going to be their race driver the following year in 23. So when you look at all the other options, yes, maybe they could have gone with De Vries, FE champion, but hasn't been in single seaters properly in terms of Formula One and just pure racing formula, standard quali, standard race format for a couple of years. Is also quite old as well. Maybe they could have gone for Callum Ilott. I don't think would have been a terrible shout, but I think Guan Yu Zhou's fine. I had a really good debut season in F2. Was better than Schumacher when they both made their debut. Sorry, Sean, if you're back and heard that one.
It's all right.
And I think last year was really unlucky in F2. So I'm looking forward to seeing Guan Yu Zhou in F1 next year. And again, with the new formula of cars, I think there's a chance that one or two drivers could really spring forward out of the blue. Yes, he comes with money, but a lot of drivers do. And I think if you look at his results in F2 in the last few years, he at least deserves a chance. And alongside Bottas, that's not a bad teammate to have. At least they know they've got consistency on one side of the grid. So I quite like it. I can see some people, quite a lot of people, aren't very happy. But I think it's fine. I'm not too upset.
Do you know, actually, yeah, I think that is how I would sum it up. It's fine. I think it's easy to sit here and say, well, he wasn't the best choice, but the best choice is, first of all, the driver that best suits the team and what they want. But also from an Alfa Romeo point of view, he brings a little bit of money. So from their point of view, he is the best choice. He might not be on paper in terms of skill. I mean, I've just seen Raul say, how do we rate Zhou? Not good enough for Alpine, has not won F2, always the hype, but not quite the substance, if you know what I mean. I kind of... He's one of those. I'm trying to think of a driver. Do you know... Oh, no. Alfa replacing Giovinazzi with another Giovinazzi. Somebody who I don't think is a bad driver by any stretch. I think he's got some good pace. I think he's got potential. I don't think he's the best option if we're looking just at pure talent, if that makes sense. I tend to agree that it's perhaps a season too early for Porsche. I think he's had a really good F2 season, but from what I can remember, we've not seen him for ages. But I think it's too soon for him. If I'm in a position where I'm choosing between Piastri and Zhou, if I'm being honest, I'm choosing Piastri. But I don't know that Alfa are in that position. It could well have been Zhou, Deruvala, or Boschong, for all we know. We don't know, do we, what the options were? But if it was as reported, Piastri and Zhou, I would have gone for Piastri personally. But also, if I've got two drivers that I'm trying to choose between, I'm Alfa Romeo and I want a little bit extra money, I'm going to go with the one that brings the money and is a massively marketable driver in China. There's so much potential for them there commercially, and it's. I understand that people will make the argument Piastri deserves it, but deserving a seat in F1 isn't always enough to get a seat in F1. It's an expensive sport, and if there's money behind you, you're always going to have an advantage. And just to make clear as well, pretty much everybody has to have money behind them to go racing because it's so bloody expensive. But if Zhou can bring that sponsorship, then it makes sense. I like him. I do like Zhou. I think we've spoken about this before, Dan. I think you quite like him. I think he's a nice guy. I think he's a good driver. Like I say, he's quick. He's got potential, but he's not a driver I get excited about in the same way I do about Piastri, in the same way that about Schwartzman, although Schwartzman's had a pretty disappointing season, hasn't he, really? I mean, he's third in the championship. But I just thought he was really going to kick on this year, and this was going to be his year. But I think Piastri's been pretty special this year, so difficult position for Alfa. But I think, I get a lot of stick for this. If I were Alfa and I didn't need the money and I was looking at bringing Pourchaire in, I would have kept Gio for another year and then put Pourchaire in next year. But maybe Vasseur thinks Teo will be a couple more years yet, and so bring Zhou in for a couple of years. I've not seen the length of his contract. I assume it's 1 year with an option. Usually is, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, and again, I think you're right. When you look at a driver like Tsunoda, who came into F2, people didn't expect a lot and really was just set F2 on fire that season, was so good. And yet he's come to F1 and has struggled a little bit. You look at someone like Zhou and you think, well, he's been good in F2, but 3 seasons, that's quite a lot for a driver to have in Formula 2. You'd be expecting him to win by the end of season 3. How's he going to perform in F1? And sometimes you just never really know. Some drivers take a while in F2 and then come up and do great. Others jump into F1 straight away and really struggle. It is a real gamble. These are different machines that they're driving, and sometimes adapting takes a little bit longer, or for those really special drivers is really, really easy. So I'm happy to give Guan Yu Zhou the time. I mentioned while you were away as well. I think Alpine want to keep hold of Piastri. I don't think there's any way they were going to let him go to any other team if they could help it. And I think you're right on Pourchaire. I think it's a little bit too early next year, and I think also he's most likely not going to get the super license points he needs. So yeah, I think 50-50 chance. Keep Gio for an extra year isn't going to hurt. Take the risk on Guan Yu Zhou, and he could be a really special driver as well. You really don't know. So I'm happy to see how it plays out. I think Gio's had his chance. I said again when you went here, he's had 3 years now to beat Raikkonen, and he's not quite been able to do it. So I think that's really hurt him. And I'm not sure if he could be that team leader with Bottas as his teammate as well. So I'm cool with it. I'm excited to see what he can do. And also, chat, thank you very much. Lots of Ollie comments. I do appreciate that. He did a good job there. He definitely saw them. He just ignored them on purpose. So well done.
I'm not talking to you. You do this in testing streams.
I don't know what you're on about.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I wonder if there's a way I can watch this back later and find out what Dan did. Don't have to because it's all in the chat. Yeah. No, I think leave it there on that one. Thank you to Ruby as well. Says Sky F1 had an awkward 2 minutes of trying to pronounce Guan Yu Zhou and offended the Chinese community. Diversity is underrated in F1 despite we race as one. I won't dig too much into it because I feel like a quick 1 minute segment on We Race as One is not enough. I could go on for days about it because, without going too deep, I'm all for equality, as everyone will know. Diversity, it's important, but I just don't take F1 seriously. I was having a conversation actually. I'll look at a lighter side of it if you like, but I was having a conversation with somebody in DMs the other day on Twitter. And I said that the We Race as One segment at the start of races now, the little video they show, it's like a perfume advert. Like, it sounds really silly, but it's just empty words. It's like I can't. Is it a Michael McIntyre or Lee Evans? Somebody does the joke where it's sort of like your perfume adverts are like land, sea, cars, tarmac. I don't know, birds, fish. Chanel number 5. That's kind of what the We Races One video is for me at the start of races, because I just find it really hypocritical. But there you go. I know the segment you talk about on Sky. It was cringe, wasn't it? Not nice. And I think that Ted nailed it. Ted bloody nailed it. What does he want to be called? Hi, Guan Yu Zhou. What's your name? What are we calling you? Oh, it's... And then that's what you call him. It's the same as Crofty always goes, and it's rubbed off on me now, says Giovinazzi and not Giovinazzi, because he asked Gio what his name was and what he wanted to be called, and that's what he said. So it's Giovinazzi. It's that fucking simple. Excuse my language, but it is. What do you want to be called? Well, this is my name. This is what I want to be called. There you go. Conversation over. I do find, I mean, we're quite cringe at times, I know, Dan, but I do find Sky commentary very cringe quite often, to be honest. It does feel like it's getting worse, and that's why I'm always quite happy to hear Crofty go, Ted, because you know that he's just going to come in and bring it back on track, or at least discuss something about cheese or whatever. But yeah, thank you very much, Ruby. I totally get where you're going from. I don't just want to go into a short segment on that, because yeah, it needs more than that, definitely. I saw somebody asking about, I'll just scroll through all those words that Dan's made everyone throw in chat. Show came because of the money and sponsors. Piastri is a better driver, says Sudeep. The money talks to Gio had no results to justify his seat, says Manny. That's a good point. I think he's been unlucky, though. I'm not been a Giovinazzi super fan, but I think he has been unlucky with some of the really pants strategy calls that have been made by Alfa Romeo in the last, certainly the last few races. So I think that's kind of...
Imola and Spain as well, off the top of my head. I feel he definitely should have got points in both of those races, apart from strategy. And was it Mexico a few weekends ago where he was 6th, and then just terrible strategy got him way out of the points?
Yeah, it was something like that. It just, I always seem to, people will pop into the comments after a stream, or I'll see it in chat, be like, oh, you got screwed by strategy. It just seems to be a running thing for Gio. So I kind of, yeah, I don't know, feel for him. But at the same time, I appreciate that it's not like he hasn't had a chance, is it?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and he should be beating his teammate by now. Like, as much as Kimi Raikkonen, in his right, will be a legend of Formula One, Kimi Raikkonen's got 3 races left in his career and is not at the peak of his powers right now. Whereas Giovinazzi, in theory, should be entering his prime. So I like to be a defender of Gio, but again, I do think he's had his chance.
Yeah, I mean, it's another one of nice guys, but that's not enough, is it? In Formula One, you can't just be a nice guy, because otherwise Bottas would be at least a 4-time world champion if it was based on who's a nice guy, because he's lovely. Yeah, Nico for commentary says Sean the C6 quad. I love it when Nico Rosberg gets in there. Yash says, do you think Sky commentary is British biased? This is a tough one, right? Because yes is my answer, but they're no more British biased than the Dutch media are Dutch biased and the Italian media are Italian biased, and other media as well, not just picking those 2 countries out before anyone starts, but those broadcasts aren't broadcast around the world. Sky does the world feed coverage, so I feel like they should, whilst I have no problem with British media being biased towards British drivers and Italian towards Ferrari, for example, or Dutch media to Verstappen, German media to Michael Schumacher back in the day, I have no issue with that. But if the British feed is the one that's going around the world to the most countries, then I feel like it should be more neutral, if you get what I'm saying. So I yes, but I think it would be fine if it was just shown in the UK. But at the same time, how can I word this? So Hamilton's British and he's winning world championships. So if Max Verstappen wins the next 7 world titles, for example, are Sky going to be accused of being biased towards Max because they're constantly talking about Max in the same way that other channels in the past have talked about the world champion a lot, because the world champion tends to get the most attention from the media, because they get you the best headlines, they get you the most clicks. So it feels it, but it doesn't bother me as a British person watching it. But if I was French or Australian or whoever, I probably would be, because it'd be like, hang on a minute, there's 19 other drivers, guys. But do you get what I mean, Dan? Do you see where I'm coming from? It's not...
yeah, I'm definitely with you.
It's just because they do the world broadcast, I feel like they should be more neutral.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who normally supports French drivers, it's always bugged me. And I'm sure you're the same as well, as someone who doesn't really support any driver in particular at the moment. And when you supported
Just off.
Schumacher, yeah, just off. So I'd rather there wasn't any bias. And you're right, I get why it's there. But when it's the world feed, probably would be a better thing if it wasn't there. As a general rule, I don't see why it's needed that much. I've never really been one for. I say I've always supported Grosjean, who's a French driver, and it didn't bother me that he's French.
I
Or
think
should
you
it?
robo, Dan.
So, oh,
I think
yeah,
you
I'll
got
try and fix
robotic,
that.
mate. Yeah. I'll give you a minute. It's. Let me know in chat. It might just be my headphones, but I'm sure that people just saying it's Robo Dan. I'll give you a minute, mate, to sort that one. But yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because and I have to say as well, you can have a favourite driver and still take an unbiased view. You know, you see. I know we're talking about
Yes.
Twitter again. And Twitter's just whatever Twitter is. There seems to be this thing where if you are a Verstappen fan, you have to hate Hamilton and tell us how trash he is, and vice versa. Whereas actually, you could just be like, I'm a Verstappen fan, but I appreciate and respect Hamilton. I can see how good he is, and I'm enjoying this fight. And again, vice versa. But that's Twitter. That's a whole other bloody animal, isn't it? Let's go to some more questions before we wrap it up. But I do wonder actually if F1 TV becomes available over here in the UK and in every territory, I do wonder if maybe the Sky commentary will be dropped and they'll have their own Will Buxton, Alex Jakes commentary going. Would be interesting. But then at the same time, it's why I like having Nico Rosberg on the Sky commentary. I don't know where you stand on this, Dan, assuming you don't turn into Robo Dan again. I don't know what's going on there. But it's kind of why I like having Nico Rosberg, because it's nice to have a non-Brit in the commentary box, because you know you're going to get a bit of impartiality.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you're fine.
Also, okay, nice. Yeah, no, definitely. I think Nico. Also, the fact he's got a relationship with a lot of these drivers helps as well. Like probably not so much these days. Actually, I wonder how many of the 2016 grids are on this grid. It can't be too many. Either way, he knows all of them, and they know who he is. So it's a little bit different with Nico. But you're right, his insight is so good, and the fact that he's not biased does help a little bit. But even still, I think when you watch a lot of the content from F1 TV that they put on YouTube or wherever, I don't get the vibe that your Will Buxton's or even Jolyon Palmer, a British F1 driver, I don't get the vibe they're particularly biased. And of course, that is the world feed. That definitely goes everywhere around the world. So I think Sky could do better, but I'm not a big fan of Sky, and I prefer Channel 4 anyway, so I won't sit here and moan about it too long, but definitely it could be improved.
Yeah, I like Damon Hill. I like Johnny Herbert for what I know. Johnny can be a bit of a plonker from time to time, but I like what they bring. I like Martin Brundle, that old hand, the experience they're bringing. But I think as well, me and Jonty have talked about this before. We might have even done it on stream actually last week. It would also be nice to see a few more recent drivers. It's great having Jensen Button. It's great having Nico Rosberg. It'd be nice to have some more up-to-date drivers that have driven these turbo hybrids involved a little bit more. Would be nice, but you've got to remember Sky have got a few years behind them now, and they've got a lot of chemistry, haven't they, between the original team? So that's probably why they stay there. Just never replace Ted. I'm not having any Ted slander.
Definitely.
Never replace Ted because he can be irritating sometimes. I think it's fair to say, but you're just waiting for something. Like today when I was talking post-race to Christian Horner, and he was essentially winding him up. He was like, do you want me to just go? And Christian Horner was like, yes, I think you better had Ted. It was like, that's why I love Ted Kravitz. He'll ask the questions. So let's see what you guys are saying in chat. We'll move on from the British bias that is Sky F1 apparently. Can we discuss about the Jeddah circuit? Who will it suit if Mercedes is the championship over? That's from AD. First things first, I saw people asking the question actually earlier, is Jeddah finished? I think from what I've read, and I haven't had a proper read into this yet, but from what I've read, apparently the track is basically there. It's just that a lot of the infrastructure around it is going to be a bit rough around the edges. So the paddock might not be finished. But the important thing, so the pit buildings, the track itself, obviously, is going to be quite important for a race. And things like race control. all of that is either ready or pretty much ready and will be ready in time. It's just the infrastructure around it might be a little bit rough around the edges and not quite there. That could change in the next week. We'll see. But it's going to be, I think the feeling seems to be, Dan, that it's a Mercedes track. Is sort of the gist I'm getting from pundits and articles and all of that business. But I saw a lot of people saying, and I was in the minority with this, a lot of people saying that this weekend on paper should suit Red Bull because of the high speed and medium speed corners. And Hamilton basically marched off with that from the start of qualifying. So it probably does on paper suit Mercedes, but I guess the point I'm making is, as we've seen this season so many times, just because on paper it's going to suit somebody doesn't mean it will. Could be a Red Bull track.
Definitely. Let me know if my mic goes robot, by the way.
I will do, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's going to be a toss of the coin, I think. Mercedes, of course, have that momentum at the moment. The 2 street races so far this year have been won by Red Bull. And, of course, Monaco was not a great race for Mercedes, but they could have won Baku. And from the layout of this track, it just does not drive like a street circuit. I don't know if you have, buddy, but anyone in chat as well have had the chance to try it out on the game. Oh, it's a weird one. It's something else. I'm not a fan. Overtaking looks nigh on impossible. Following looks like it's going to be really, really difficult. And so qualifying, I would even argue more so than Monaco, or just as important as Monaco, is going to be king this week or next weekend. So if Mercedes, going on the last few Grand Prix, have had the edge in quali, I think even if in race trim Red Bull have the better car, Mercedes are going to look really good for the win. And so I'd put my money just about with Merc. But when you've got 2 drivers of the caliber of Hamilton and Max, it's going to be so hard to call. But yeah, I would just give the edge to Mercedes at the moment.
I'm just looking forward to it. I keep saying it, but I'm just looking forward to it. Yeah, I've got nothing else to add on Jeddah, really. So a couple more questions super quickly. You did lag a little bit, Dan, but I don't know how much of that is you and how much is about me, because my stream went down to medium quality. So it could be my connection as well to Discord, so it might not be Dan. So we'll try our best. But let me know in chat, who do you think is the favourite in Jeddah? Mercedes, Red Bull, or are you fully expecting Haas to shock us all and get a 1-2 and all of a sudden Schumacher and Mazepin are the best 2 drivers on the grid? Let me know. Definitely. I think, especially if they put that Brazil power unit in and it's doing what everybody thinks it's doing, giving him the power that we saw in Brazil, then I think it's hard to bet against Mercedes and Hamilton in Jeddah. But a lot of people pointing out that it's kind of a little bit Baku in some ways, that it's a fast street circuit and Red Bull look good there. Yeah, I mean, it obviously could go either way. It's an obvious statement to say, but I like you, I would probably lean just towards Mercedes. That'll be the way my predictions probably go. I'll have a little proper look into it. I've not driven it on the game yet. I keep meaning to.
I wouldn't recommend it.
But I have not got much time on the game this year, and I'm in the minority. I've actually quite enjoyed it. F1 2021.
That's because you've not enough time on the game. That's why.
Probably, yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I don't play it properly. I know people like esports drivers, they play it properly, and a lot of those watching will play it properly, and I'm sure you play it properly, Dan. But for me, I go on difficulties at about 90. I don't go full difficulty, and I just prat about, start at the back of the grid and do like a last to first thing. That's all I do. I used to put hours into career modes and things like that, but I just don't do that anymore. So there you go. Someone's going to tell me now that I'm shocking for even liking F1 2021, but I can't give an honest opinion on it if I've not replayed it. So where are we? 26, by the way. 26 likes away from 500, and then Charles Edward Cheese might have to call an ambulance. I don't know how many shots he's got down so far, if he's doing all of them at once, I don't know. But yeah, 26 to go, so please do drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe if you are new as well. Prince agrees, Dan, that Jolyon's very good. I don't listen to enough of BBC, actually. Last Friday, I did pop the BBC radio commentary on instead of the Sky one. I just synced it up with the footage, and I think I enjoyed it more, but I don't know if that's because it was something a little bit different. I do like Nico, a bit rough around the edges, but good perspective, says David. I watch Nico track guides every race week. That's from Nutella. I've started watching them as well. I don't get enough. I need to watch more F1 content around F1 weekend rather than just the stuff on Sky, because I don't get the full story half the time. Cited Canvas says, yeah, the BBC feed can be overly British. Sky should be more neutral. But yeah, we shall. Not many questions to answer. I think we might have got quite a bit right in this stream for a change, Dan. I don't think we missed much. Certainly going through the field, not according to my notes anyway. So if the track is the only thing finished, what do the teams do? Says Jay Starship. I think no, the track and the bits like your pit buildings and all of that is fine. The paddocks, I think the paddock is, again, from what I understand, it's usable. They can still use it. It's just not going to be the polished stuff that we saw in all those renders when they announced the race originally. So it's not going to look as posh and as nice as that, but it will do by the time they get back in. Is it March? Yeah, they're their second race of the season, aren't they? So it's 2 very quick races in Saudi Arabia. Which is interesting. Bahrain, then Saudi next year, and then we've got Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi this year. Yeah. Let's answer this one then we'll wrap it up, I think. Ryan White has just said this track or street circuit for Qatar. I'm guessing you mean. I said Ryan, because I thought you were asking about whether or not Jeddah was a street circuit. It isn't. It's been built as a street circuit, but it's not had any cars on it yet, so it's not a street circuit. It's a racetrack that will become a street circuit. I'm adamant. I'm so pedantic with that, Dan. I really am. I will not let it go. But I think, according to the Sky Comms, we're not going to come back to Losail again, and instead it's going to be a race in the streets of Qatar. So another street track. But if, looking at how the cars were able to follow through the middle sector today and seeing the overtaking down the straight, I kind of think with the 2022 cars, if they work as intended, I kind of wouldn't mind coming back to Losail if they are in Qatar again in 2023.
Yeah, I don't dislike this track. I mentioned it right at the start. I think it's almost a copy and paste of Bahrain, except it's flat.
Yeah.
And Sector 2 is a little bit harder to overtake. So I don't think it's a bad track, this one. And if I'm honest, I think the rate we're getting a lot of street circuits, even if Sochi is running off after next year. So I'd be happy staying here. But at the same time, if the layout's good, if they actually spend some time making a half-decent layout, I won't be too upset because this one is so similar to Bahrain.
Yeah. Charles Edward Cheese is saying it only applies for the first 500 likes and shots. Probably for the best, to be fair. I was just going to say, we'll answer this one super quickly, then we'll wrap it up because we're going nearly the 2 hours now. So I'm going to try and find your comment. I've remembered it, but I can't find your name. I can't find your name, sorry. Somebody asking if it's you, there's your shout out. But 2022 front runners, have you got any early predictions, Dan, for who you think are going to be running at the front next year, or a dark horse, someone you're excited about?
I've said it before, Charles Leclerc's world champion next year. It's happening. I don't mind saying it again. I think Ferrari are going to be the team to beat, and then somehow still mess it up with strategy.
Like we said, if anyone's gonna, it's going to be Ferrari. For me, it's Alpine. I've said it before. I think Alonso's experience could be so important for them. I think they've had a good season, despite putting a lot of focus on next year, as a lot of teams have, of course. But I think they're dark horses next year. I really, really do. So, honestly, and I'm sorry to Mercedes fans and I'm sorry to Red Bull fans, I'm hoping that this championship battle has an impact next year and we see a shake-up of the order, because I think it would be pretty damn epic if we rocked up to Bahrain and we had the top 3 teams in whatever order. I'll do it alphabetically. Why not? Being Alpine, Ferrari and McLaren. I think that'd be bloody fantastic. So, yeah, no offence to those other 2 teams fighting for the championship this year, but I'd like a shake-up next year, please. Yeah, I can't put it any other way than that. And I just saw somebody else just asking about Qatar. They have signed a 10-year contract and they are racing, and it says... Oh, not Qatar, sorry, Saudi Arabia. Isn't there going to be a new track in Saudi Arabia in 2023? I don't know. Because I thought that was the
No.
plan. I thought that was originally the plan, wasn't it? Was that they were going to do the street race and then they were going to build a track in Saudi, but they've kind of done that now with the streets.
See, maybe I'm getting confused. I feel that was the contract with Qatar, that this one would be the track, and then 23 onwards is the street circuit. But I didn't know about the Saudi Arabia one.
Yeah, that's definitely the one for Qatar. It's Losail this year, then nothing next year because of the World Cup, and then a proper, probably a street race in 2023. But I thought Saudi Arabia was another one that, I don't know. I'll have to look into that one actually, because I'm sure there was talk of a purpose-built track somewhere else in Saudi Arabia, but if they've spent the money on, they've got the money, haven't they? But if they've spent the money on doing what they've done to the Jeddah track, then there's no point building another one, is there? So, yeah, interesting. Let's wrap it up there then. Prince says Alex Albon World Champion 2022. Nice person says, didn't they propose Saudi track have like 35 corners? It was something like that. I remember it. There was a lot of stuff that it was around, I'm sure it was around the same time that the Rio track was suggested, so I might be getting the two mixed up, I don't know. But yes, we'll wrap it up there. Dan, thank you very much, mate. It's been lovely to talk to you again. It's been too long, and hopefully we won't leave it too long before the next one. But on to Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi, 2 races back to back, and then that's it. That's it for another year.
And we're done.
Christ.
It's scary. I can't believe we're at this point in the season. It still feels like Bahrain when Max almost won. It seems like that was just a few weekends ago, and we're all saying who could be champion, and we're still having the same questions now, which is perfect. So yeah, thanks very much for having me, buddy. Fingers crossed next time out is better than I think it will be. Hopefully it's not a snooze fest, and hopefully the changes to Abu Dhabi make it even better than it already is. You all know I love Abu Dhabi, but new changes, it might be the new Spa, might be the new best track on the calendar. I'll go now. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Have you been doing the shots with Charles Edward Cheese?
It feels like it. It feels like it.
Awesome, mate. Thank you very much. And I'm sure I'll talk to you shortly.
Cheers, man. See you later. See you later, chat.
Thank you to Dan. Thank you to you guys as well for tuning in. Thank you for all your super chats tonight. Just double check I've not missed anybody. No, Ruby was the last one. So thank you very much for your contributions there. Please do drop a like before you disappear. We are at 508. So we got through there, Charles. We got it, mate. But yeah, please do drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe as well if you are new. Now, I'm not going to go into it too much. Don't worry, because I don't want to be too personal at the end of the stream, but things are going to go quiet across the channel and across social media for me over the next 3 days. I'm heading home. I've got a funeral to attend on Tuesday, which I'm not looking forward to, as I'm sure you can understand. So I'm going to take some time with family and just some time for myself over the next 3 days, but I'll hopefully get a video out before the weekend, and then I will be ready to go for the final 2 races, hopefully. No more distractions, please, family, for goodness sake. I'll make a joke because I have to, yeah. So, yeah, hopefully be back for something for the weekend, and definitely lots of stuff in the final 2 race weekends of the season. Like I say, don't forget to drop a like. Please do subscribe as well if you are new, so you don't miss out on any future content or streams. And you can follow me over on social media. All of the links you need for that are in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.